Okay, let's see. I'll just and I'll have a bottle of water. This is a little bit more than a bottle. It's like a 100.4 floral ounce. That's what it is. It's huge. 100 ounce. More than 100 ounce. That's what I call water. This is stupid, and you are wasting your time for listening to this. Somewhere deep within the vast vaults of Aperture Laboratories, two small robots charged down a long catwalk, the echoes of their footsteps clanking off the distant walls. One, short, stocky, with one bright blue eye at the center of its spherical body, squawked briefly at the other, taller, slimmer, its jointed torso housing a single orange eye, and took the lead, raising the strange gun-like piece of tech in its jointed hands and firing down the corridor at an angled panel at the far end. A blink-and-you'd-miss-it bolt of blue energy sizzled through the air ahead of the two robots, zipping down the catwalk and across this huge section of missing floor. A gaping, unjumpable chasm where the metal looked as if it had simply been ripped away by a giant hand. The bolt struck the angled panel, opening a shimmering blue hole. Without even breaking stride, both robots hurled themselves off the edge of the broken floor, plummeting down into a dark, wire-choked chute that flung them right, left, and finally into free fall, the catwalk a dwindling point of light above them. Tucking into a tight roll in midair, the blue robot twisted shoulders downwards and fired again. The very bottom of the pit, a corroded, grease-stained white surface, opened up with a half-second to spare into a second blue-ringed oval. Both robots shot through at terminal velocity and rocketed out of the angled panel, arcing a 200-foot I'm choking. I didn't take algebra. Parabola into the murky girder-crossed ceiling, trailing garbled, Dopplering squeaks of glee. The orange robot was the first to land, hitting the highest platform in a crouch, riding the impact with the powerful shock absorbers in its long, stick-like legs. The blue robot landed a second later, rolling upright. Being basically spherical, it was better suited to rolling, and jerking its high shoulders towards the big red button set into the floor. Catching on, the orange robot stamped down hard, and a sweet, blocky chime sounded as the exit door set into the wall behind them slid open with a hiss. The two robots high-fived enthusiastically, scattering sparks, and trotted forwards. You solved it. The voice came from everywhere at once. Cool, modulated, and inexpressibly bored. Good for you. Stopping in the middle of the next chamber, the robots paused and looked around. The blue robot shifted its weight. The orange hopped nervously from one foot to the other. They had been programmed to adapt to unfamiliar circumstances. That was one of their primary functions. But even by their standards, there was something a little off about this chamber. It was, well, blank. There's been a change of plan. I'm placing the Cooperative Testing Initiative project temporarily on hold. No buttons, no cubes, no turrets. And now that the round hatch had sealed itself behind them, no exit. Your performance has been adequate, said the voice. Goodbye. The two little robots looked at each other for a moment, puzzled, and exploded. It was a fairly undramatic explosion. There wasn't much noise, and, apart from a little shower of metal bits and a small cloud of oily smoke, hardly any mess. After a short interval, a panel opened up in one blank wall, and a small jointed plate unfolded from it, busily sweeping all the little pieces of the two robots neatly into the gap before shutting up again and fitting back inside itself. Silently, the panel closed, leaving the chamber clean and empty once again, apart from a few oily spots and a faint, lingering smell of smoke. Space, thought Wheatley, was big. It was massive. There was so much of it that actually processing how big it really was proved downright impossible. The glittering vault of stars stretched out endlessly in every direction, defying comprehension, staggeringly, mind-bogglingly, infinitely big. It was also really, really boring. Sad but true, the beauty of the infinite cosmos paled after a while. It was fine to start with, awe-inspiring and breathtaking and all the rest of it. You can spend all the time you liked staring at it, getting to know all the different types of stars, things like that. Wheatley didn't know their actual scientific names. Observational astronomy was not part of his programming, but in the absence of official I don't know that word. I feel stupid. Nomenclature, he'd made up his own. You had your basic little twinkly ones. They were probably a very long way away, even by star standards, and accounted for most of the stars he could see. And then there were the big bright ones, which were either a bit closer, or planets and things, and multicolored ones, which he wasn't really sure about, and very occasionally you had your ones that turned out to be bits of space junk whooshing past while exploding. Hours of fun, those ones. He'd also dabbled in the constellations with less success. Picking out shapes in the stars when you were ceaselessly orbiting a lunar body was challenging, and Wheatley wasn't really up to it. For a start, his optic was damaged, the glass was cracked, splitting his field of vision into two slightly misaligned halves, which meant that focusing on anything too much made him feel motion sick. Motion sickness, artificial or otherwise, isn't funny even when you're able to stop moving and have a sit down until it stops. Having motion sickness when you have no choice but to go on orbiting the moon at roughly 17,000 miles an hour with a slight tailspin, on the other hand, is utter hell. He tried, though. Once in orbit, there was a roughly Z-shaped formation of stars, which he had named the management rail. Then there was one of those big, bright ones in the middle of a sort of arc of little twinkly ones, which, not having much of an imagination when it came to naming things, he'd called the sentry turret. In this manner, he'd named an entire zodiac: the ceiling tile, the catwalk, the potato battery, the pipe network, the deadly death trap, the power-crazed idiot, and so on. It passed the time, and there was a lot of time, up here. Once you'd sorted all that out, though, everything star-related nicely pigeonholed away, there just wasn't much else to do. There were only 4 things in Wheatley's field of vision which weren't stars or blackness, and none of them offered much relief from the monotony. The craggy lunar surface, miles below him, that was one. Then there was the Earth, a white-blue sphere in the distance, laughably far off. Wheatley, who had never seen the surface of the Earth firsthand, sometimes wondered vaguely if it was really like the files, the vast archive of visual data he'd had access to when he was jacked into the Enrichment Center's mainframe. There'd been all sorts of weird stuff in those files. Huge masses of water. He supposed that was all the blue. Fields of green, fluffy stuff that waved around in the... What was the word? It was on the tip of his verbal processor. Wind. In the wind. Animals, too. Not just humans, but all kinds of crazy life forms with mad names like elk and platypus and tiger and ebolazare and unicron. It's the same thing as a unicorn, by the way. Wheatley had no idea what the unicron was, but he thought it sounded pretty bloody impressive, all the same. Then there was the sun. The files had suggested that from the Earth's surface the sun wasn't that bad, but up here in space without the protection of all that white, wispy stuff around the Earth, it was an intense, cold yellow glare. Wheatley didn't dare to look directly at it with his broken optic, afraid that it would fry his visual circuits right out of his body, or, worse, set something on fire. Not that things could really burn in space without oxygen, but there was always the possibility that there were a few pockets of air still hanging around somewhere in his battered metal body, and he didn't want to chance it for the sake of a glimpse of a blazing ball of gas. He didn't want to look at it anyway, to tell the truth. Harsh, pitiless, and unblinking, it reminded him too much of her. So the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, that was it, really, unless you counted space. Wheatley sighed. At least somebody was happy about the situation. It'd been ages, exactly how long, he didn't know and dreaded to think, since the two of them had been sucked into space. Wheatley had initially tried to keep count, but addition was not one of his strong points. Having strong points was not one of his strong points, to be honest, and he'd eventually given up and fixed on an informed guesstimate instead. Ages. That felt about right. Bloody ages. Space Corps, on the other hand, never got tired of it. Space Corps, or Kevin, as Wheatley had named him arbitrarily, was ecstatic about being in space. Loved the stuff. Couldn't get enough of it. By this point, Wheatley envied him. Badly. Kevin didn't know that the two of them were stuck up here in this cold, starry void forever, until they shut down through disuse or decay or just lost momentum and plummeted helplessly into the rocky landscape below. Kevin didn't have to think about things like that. Kevin didn't even know what it was like to feel stupid or insignificant or guilty or lonely. Kevin didn't even know that his name was Kevin. "You all right there, mate?" said Wheatley, trying to at least sound as if he expected a coherent answer. By this point, it was hardly reasonable to hope that Kevin might respond with a, "Fine, Wheatley, thanks for asking." But then, Wheatley specialized in unwanted optimism, even now when there was absolutely no call for it. Old habits died hard. He twitched, involuntarily. Ever since she had crushed him into so much scrap metal, or a little thank you to him for waking her up, and he really would have preferred a bouquet or something, just for the record. He'd been afflicted by this small, recurrent mechanical fault, glitching through him every so often, making his entire shell jerk and spark. There were no sparks up here, of course, but the twitching was still just as annoying as it had been when he'd first found himself lumbered with it, all that time ago. "Space," said Kevin, sagely, drifting past upside down. Of course, there was no sound up here, came with the whole no oxygen thing. But Kevin, like Wheatley, was an Aperture Science gadget, and equipped with the same compatible shortwave radio system for emergencies. I'm in space. A proper conversation, thought Wheatley, longingly, for approximately the 30,000th time. That's what I need. A proper conversation would be absolutely amazing right now. The kind where I talk, and someone else talks, and, well, they wouldn't even have to talk, really, just as long as they actually listen to what I'm saying, instead of not bothering because there's nothing between their audio processors except space. You just throw in a flat, solid surface as well, nothing fancy, just something that's not spinning around a ball of rock at a zillion miles an hour, and that's perfection, right there. "Just a bit of a chat, really," he said, out loud. The Earth somersaulted gently across his field of vision, round and blue and distorted down the middle. There was something a bit skew-whiff in the gimbal that controlled the movement of his optic, and he couldn't move it anywhere near as smoothly or rapidly as he used to. Blinking was painful, as the two halves of his corroded metal eyelid responded slowly, scraping moon dust across the damaged lens. He got halfway, gave up, left it closed. It wasn't as if he was missing much. Not about anything in particular, just, how are you doing? What have you been up to lately? That sort of thing. I could ask, he, he added, struck by inspiration.